Hey everyone, so my name is Allie and welcome to my channel, and today I am going to be doing a book unhaul. I feel like it's been a few months since I did my last book haul, but there were definitely a few books on my shelf now that I wanted to get rid of and that I felt like I needed to part with. And honestly, I'm going to say that the majority of this stack are YA books. And that's mainly because, I mean, if you have been following my channel for the past couple of years, or if you're just brand new to my channel, I have not been reading a lot of YA. Especially this year, only 25-ish% of my reading throughout the entire year has been YA books. A couple of years ago, back in like 2019 or 2020, that might have been a little bit different, but definitely within these past 2 years, I have really stopped reading as much YA as I used to. So I have a lot of YA books, some that I've read, some that I haven't, some that I loved, some that I didn't. But these books are mainly ones that I just felt like I didn't have much of a connection with at this point. And I feel like they will be better served in a home where they are going to be appreciated. So before I start this video, I do want to say that I have a Pango Books shop, and that'll be linked down below. And I have so many books on sale and so many more to add. I have not put even like a fraction of those books up on my Pango Bookstore, so I am adding new things all the time. These are just some of the books that are from the specific bookshelves within my room. Okay, so we might as well get started. I believe that this is the only adult book in this entire stack. Like, I didn't realize that I had taken so many YA books off my shelf for this one, but the only adult book that I have to unhaul today is Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino, and I kept going back and forth. Like, every time I had an unhaul video to do, I always went back and forth whether I wanted to unhaul this book. I did give it 3 out of 5 stars when I initially read it, and I really don't have any intention to reread it. This is actually the first book that I ever got recommended from TikTok. I want to say that I read this back in 2020, so like at the beginning of the pandemic, and I remember being on Book Talk during that time. This book was everywhere on Book Talk. Like, I saw it constantly on my For You page. So many people were reading it, and I feel like this book was really, really hyped. Even on the front cover, it says, winner of the Whiting Award, the New York Times Book Review, 100 Notable Books of 2019. And then Zadie Smith said, a whip-smart, challenging book. It filled me with hope. It's a New York Times bestseller, PEN America Literary Award finalist. Like, there's so many accolades just on this cover in general. And I had really, really high expectations going into this book. And I will say that the first essay within this book I was actually pretty intrigued by. And there were, I think, maybe 1 or 2 other essays within this book that I did enjoy. But overall, I just felt like it wasn't nearly as deep or intellectual as a lot of the other reviewers were saying it was. So I was a little disappointed. I think I just expected a little too much from this book. I want to see what I wrote for my actual review of this book, because I was pretty brutal for Trick Mirror. Okay, so my review is super, super short, so I'll just read it. I said, unfortunately, I don't think Gia and I would be friends. The writing was fine, but a lot of the essays were glorified book reviews at best. I do remember reading this book and feeling like she had just read a few Wikipedia pages, maybe read a few other books, and just reiterated exactly what those books and Wikipedia pages said. It really just felt like a summary, a review of other books. And I'm like, why are we paying to read that? There were a few essays I actually enjoyed, but a lot of them were repetitive. She relied too heavily on regurgitating Wikipedia pages and not enough on her as a person. The tagline says, reflections on self-delusion, but there is very rarely any self-reflection at all. Truly an unfortunate read, and I wish I would have been able to find this book used and discounted instead of being new. So yeah, so if you are even at all interested in reading this book, it will be on my Pango bookshelf. This is kind of the worst kind of video to promote my Pango Books account on, because who wants to read these books after I'm like, oh, I didn't really like them? So this next book is part of my YA collection, and that is A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. I did actually read this book. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, I believe. I was pretty lukewarm about this book. It wasn't horrible. I didn't absolutely hate it. I just didn't fall in love with it like I was expecting to. It's been quite a while since I read this book. I think I might have read it back in 2020 or 2019. I think I maybe read this during the pandemic, but I just did not really enjoy this book. Like I said, as much as I thought I would. I think I had really high expectations before going into it because I knew so many people who absolutely loved this book. And I just felt like some of the pacing was a little weird. Some of the storytelling elements didn't really work for me. Some of the characterization didn't really work for me either. This book has dual perspectives, and I felt like the male perspective wasn't fleshed out enough. I felt like he was really only characterized as being the younger brother, or was he an older brother? I honestly can't remember. His entire personality was the fact that he was a brother to his 2 sisters, and that was it. That was his entire personality. That was everything that he was trying to work towards, and he was just a very one-note character. And I just wasn't a huge fan of this book. I thought it was okay, the writing was fine, but it just did not wow me. So we're gonna get rid of it. I had been holding on to it for a little while because I love the spine of this book. I think it's absolutely beautiful, but I know I'm not gonna read the sequel. I'm not gonna finish with the series, so we're just gonna get rid of it. This next book is actually one that I did really enjoy when I read it, but I just don't have any sort of like emotional connection to it, and that is Pride by Evie Zaboy. I really did enjoy this book when I initially read it. I believe back in 2019, like the very, very early beginning of 2019, back in February, and I did really enjoy it. It has some Afro-Latina representation, and it is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, and as a retelling I think it really works. I remember really enjoying the characterization. I really liked the different little plot changes and the way that Evie Zaboy was able to adapt it to a modern setting, but overall I just didn't really have like a genuine, true, deep connection to this book with the way that I have with other YA books that I have on my shelf that I've already read. So I figured this one could find a really great home. It's also a really truly beautiful book. Like, look at these end pages, absolutely gorgeous. Look at the spine. Just like an absolutely beautiful book. Someone will be really lucky to have this copy. I did read it, but it honestly feels pretty new. Like there's like no damage. This next book is one that I have not read yet, but I do still kind of have plans on reading it, but I think that I'm going to read it as an audiobook, and that is What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. I remember this book got a lot of mixed reviews when it first came out and people were reading it, and not everybody was fully connecting with it, and I did end up buying it and then never reading it. So I feel like maybe I was a little influenced by some of the reviews into being hesitant in starting it. But I do kind of still want to read it. I think, you know, there's that part of me that's a little intrigued still by what this book is about and like these characters and the setting, and I have read a few chapters of the beginning of this book and it was fine, it was good. So maybe one day I will come back to it and read it, but it'll probably be as an audiobook. This next book is kind of the same thing as What If It's Us, and that is Fire with Fire by Destiny Soraya. I tried to read this book physically. I think I got about like 40-ish pages into the book, maybe 50 pages, and I just was not connecting to it physically. So I think that this one might be a book that I need to read as an audiobook, and I was able to find it on Hoopla, so I know that it's there. I know that I have access to it, and hopefully I will be able to get to it, because this story initially intrigued me because it's about these 2 sisters, and both of these sisters were raised to slay dragons, but one of them is really into it, the other one not so much. So I thought that this was going to be a really interesting book, and I'm sure that it is, but I think that I will get more into it if I read it as an audiobook. The next book is kind of the same deal. I feel like I keep repeating myself. This one is The Stars We Steal by Alexa Dunn, and this one I also feel like I would want to read it as an audiobook. I believe I got 100 pages into this and I kind of just abandoned it. I might have read it during a reading slump, so that was probably my first mistake. But this is a retelling of Persuasion by Jane Austen, and it's set in like a sci-fi setting up in space. And I do remember the first 100 pages being really interesting and really engaging, but like I said, I was in the middle of a reading slump, and when I'm in the middle of a reading slump, it is very hard for me to focus on literally any book. A book has to be like groundbreakingly amazing for me to get out of a reading slump, or I have to reread a favorite that I already know is groundbreaking and amazing. This one definitely was not it, but I feel like if I'm in the right mood for like a sci-fi, it's very light sci-fi too. It's not like hardcore, really science heavy sci-fi. We're talking very light sci-fi, kind of like Star Wars, but even lighter than that. This one was really good from what I read of it. I just don't think that I'm ever going to reach for it physically, so we're gonna look for the audiobook. The next book is one that I read and I loved. I remember reading it back in like 2017, 2018, and that is When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. And I do remember really liking this book. I think I gave it like a 5 out of 5 stars, but I just don't really see the need to have it on my bookshelf. And that's mainly because I don't think I'm ever going to reach for this book again. Maybe perhaps I would reach for the audiobook at some point, but definitely not for the physical copy of this book. And you know, with most of these books, especially since they're so diverse, I would like to see them in other people's collections and have other people discover them and read them and enjoy them. So if I can help with that, that would be amazing, and I'm sure that this will find a really, really good home. The next book is one that I really don't understand why I even bought this book, and that is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I read this book and I did really enjoy it. I actually have a review for it on my booktube channel. I'll link it down below. And I gave it like a 4 out of 5 stars. I listened to it as an audiobook. I think the audiobook is so superior, mainly because my favorite, Santino Fontana, is the one who narrates the audiobook, and he does a fantastic job. He is absolutely perfect. I mean, he played Prince Hans in Frozen. Duh, he's gonna be a really good villain. He truly, truly makes this book what it is. So I don't know why I bought the physical copy. I am never going to read the physical copy, and it's pretty thick, so it takes up a lot of room on my shelf. And I also don't own the rest of the Hunger Games series. Like, I used to own those books, but I don't anymore because like I was like, I'm over my dystopian phase, which is true. But this was like, what, 10, maybe like 8 or 9 years ago, something like that. So I don't own those books anymore. And I don't really have any use for this one. It's not like I'm keeping it for some like sentimental value, or like it's signed or something, because it's not signed. It has no sentimental value. I don't know why I'm keeping it. So we're getting rid of it. This is a really good book. I highly recommend it. And there is going to be a movie adaptation for this one, so maybe people will want it. The next book is another one that I read and really enjoyed, and that is Felix Ever After by Kacen Callender. And I remember, I think I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. But this is kind of another book where I didn't have like a super deep personal connection to it, but I would love to see someone else read it and really love it and get a lot out of it. So even though I don't have use for this book anymore, I hope that someone else will find it and fall in love with it and read it and just treasure it and cherish it the way that it should be treasured and cherished. So yeah. Definitely want other people to read this book. It's really good. I highly, highly recommend it. The next book is one that I have not read, and I don't know, maybe I'm fooling myself. I don't really think I'm ever going to read it, and that is The Beautiful by Renee Audier. If you're in the comments right now, go ahead and try to pitch me this book if you really, really loved it and want me to read it, because maybe I will try to find the audiobook and maybe we'll read it that way. But I just never feel the desire to pick this book up. And I've had it for nearly, well, okay, 3 years. It was from October 2019, from Book of the Month. And I just have not felt the need or the desire to pick this book up in the past 3 years. I just haven't. And we're going on the 4th year, and I don't think that it's gonna happen. Maybe as an audiobook, maybe if I can be persuaded, like throw me some quotes from the book, throw me some romance from the book. Like, I need to be persuaded to read this book, and for some reason I feel like all of the opinions on this book that I have seen have been so lukewarm. I feel like everybody who reads this book is just kind of like, meh, 3 stars. Meh, 2.5 stars. You know, like, nobody has like these strong emotions about this book, so it's not really making me excited to read it. And on top of that, I am not a big fan of vampires. The only vampire books I ever really read and enjoyed were Twilight. And that was back when I was like 12 years old. So it was, yeah, it was like 15 years ago. And since I finished Breaking Dawn back when I was like maybe 13 or 14, I have not wanted to read a vampire book. I genuinely don't know why I even have this book in the first place. Like, I don't like vampires. But I think that I kind of got swept up in the hype of like, oh, maybe vampires are gonna make a comeback. They did not. But yeah, if you enjoyed this book, if you really loved it, if you like have some really great connection to this book, let me know why, and let me know why I should read it. So yeah, that's your assignment for the comment section. And the very last book is one that I actually read this year, and I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I felt very meh about it. Maybe it was 2 out of 5 stars, because I really did not like this book. And that is Down Comes the Night by Allison Saft. This is one of the most disappointing books of 2022. There, I said it. I wanted so much out of this book, and it gave me nothing. It gave me less than nothing, actually. It starts off as this really weird dystopian-esque fantasy, very like stereotypical fantasy, like from like 2017, 2018. And I was like, wait, is this not supposed to be a gothic fantasy? Like, where's the gothicness in this book? I even had to like go back and reread the synopsis to be like, oh yeah, like wait, no, I understand the synopsis. Like I'm not like confusing this with another book. I'm just confused by the first like chapter or two, because nearly nothing in this book screams gothic. Not even a little bit. I think it was just misrepresented in the synopsis, and I also think that it was mismarketed. And this happens a lot with YA, especially YA fantasy. I feel like it's the wrong kind of marketing, the wrong kind of like tropes associated with it, and they just don't know how to market YA fantasy. And this one, no exception. This one is actually the poster child for mismarketing and misrepresentation in YA fantasy. So yeah, I was highly disappointed by this book, but I know that a lot of people like it. I know that a lot of people swear by it. I personally did not swear by it at all. So yeah, love makes monsters of us all. Sure it does. Didn't really get that vibe from this book. I wish I did. Alright, so those are all of the books that I am unhauling today. That was actually quite a big unhaul, considering I feel like my other unhauls tend to be less than 10 books. This one I believe was 11 or 12 books. Oops, I'm going to knock down this book stack. It'll be nice to have some more room on my bookshelves. As you can see, they're pretty full as it is. But I do want to do a re-shelving, trying to kind of like find a different way to organize these books, because I don't really like the way that it's organized at the moment. So we are definitely going to find a different sort of system, and I'll film it, because I know that a lot of people want to see me reorganize my bookshelves. They love those kind of videos. I do as well, so I get it, and I will definitely do that kind of video soon. So I hope you all enjoyed this book unhaul. As a reminder, my Pango bookstore link is down below. I believe I have somewhere around 50 books on my bookstore at the moment, so go and check it out. There's so many good deals. And yeah, so I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok, Tumblr. All the links are going to be down below in the description, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye! Ooh,